The ship moved through the darkness of space like a silver needle through black cloth. It was called the Starward Reach, and it carried 200 souls from 6 different worlds. Some of those souls breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, some did not breathe at all. Lieutenant Katie Morris stood at the observation window and watched the Kelvin Nebula swirl in the distance. The colors were beautiful, purple and gold and deep red, like a bruise healing across the face of the universe. She had been in space for 11 years now, and she still stopped to look at things like this. Some of her alien crewmates found this strange. The Valori said humans spent too much time staring at things they could not touch. Katie thought the Valori spent too much time inside each other's heads, and not enough time appreciating a good view. The door behind her slid open, and she heard heavy footsteps. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. "You're supposed to be sleeping." Danny Cowell walked up beside her and looked out at the nebula. He was a big man with rough hands and a scar across his chin from his mining days. Before joining the Coalition military, he had spent 6 years pulling ore out of asteroids in the belt. He said it was boring work, but it taught him how to stay calm when everything around him was trying to kill him. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Something feels off tonight." Katie looked at him. Danny was not the type to say things like that. He was practical, solid, the kind of man who believed in what he could see and touch. If he said something felt off, she paid attention. "Off how?" she asked. Danny shrugged his big shoulders. "Just a feeling in my gut, like before a storm back home." Before Katie could respond, the ship's alarm began to sound. It was not the battle alarm, which was sharp and angry. This was the alert signal, 3 soft tones repeating. It meant something needed attention. Commander Velithna's voice came through the speakers. Her voice was like water flowing over stones, smooth and cold. "All senior officers to the bridge. We have received a distress signal." Katie and Danny looked at each other. Then they walked. The bridge of the Starward Reach was a large circular room, filled with floating screens and soft blue light. Commander Velithna stood at the center, her long amphibian body wrapped in the formal robes of her rank. Her skin was pale green, and her large dark eyes reflected the light of the screens around her. She was a Valori, one of the telepathic species that had founded the Coalition 300 years ago. She was also one of the finest commanders Katie had ever served under, even if she did not always understand humans. "Lieutenant Morris," Velithna said as Katie entered. "Good. We need your assessment." Katie walked to the main screen and studied the signal. It was old. Very old. The language was not in the Coalition database. The coordinates pointed to a small moon near the edge of the nebula, a place called XR7 on their maps. "How old is this signal?" Katie asked. Sub-Commander Krickstall answered. He was a Kreth, an insectoid warrior with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "Our best estimate is 2 million years, perhaps longer." Danny let out a low whistle. 2 million years. That's before any of our species had fire." "Correct," Velithna said. "The signal appears to come from a research station of unknown origin. We have detected no life signs, but the station's power systems are still functioning." Katie looked at the moon on the screen. It was gray and dead, covered in dust and craters. But something had survived there for 2 million years, still calling out into the darkness. "What do you want us to do?" Katie asked. "I am sending a landing party to investigate," Velithna said. "You will lead the human contingent, 4 of your people, plus Valori and Kreth support teams." Katie nodded. This was standard procedure. Mixed species teams allowed for different perspectives and abilities. The Valori could sense thoughts and emotions. The Kreth were powerful fighters. And humans? Well, humans were good at staying calm when things went wrong. That was why they were always included in first contact situations. The shuttle launched an hour later. Katie sat near the front, with Danny beside her. Behind them were Megan Holt, their young medic with steady hands and nervous eyes, and Ben Avery, an engineer who could make broken things work again. 6 Valori sat in the middle section, their eyes closed as they communicated silently with each other. 4 Kreth warriors sat at the back, their weapons already in their hands. As the shuttle approached the moon, Katie noticed something strange. The Valori had opened their eyes. Their expressions were wrong, tight and uncomfortable. "What is it?" Katie asked. The lead Valori, a female named Serenal, turned to look at her. "There is pressure in our minds. Something is pushing against us." Katie frowned. "Pushing how?" "I do not know how to describe it. It is like a sound we cannot hear, but we feel it. It is unpleasant." Katie looked at Danny. "You feel anything?" Danny shook his head. "Nothing. You?" Katie turned to Megan and Ben. They both shook their heads as well. Serenal's eyes widened slightly. "You feel nothing? Nothing at all?" "Sorry," Katie said. "Should we?" The Valori exchanged looks with each other. They did not speak, but Katie could tell they were communicating. Whatever they were saying, it bothered them. The shuttle touched down on the gray dust of the moon. Through the window, Katie could see the research station. It was made of black metal and strange angles, shapes that did not seem quite right. It had been built by hands that did not think like any species she knew. Then, as they watched, the lights inside the station flickered on. One by one, windows began to glow with pale yellow light. The station was waking up. "Well," Danny said quietly, "that's not creepy at all." Katie stood up and checked her weapon. "Everyone stay alert. We don't know what's waiting for us in there." She did not know how right she was. None of them did. They walked toward the station with their weapons ready and their hearts steady, not knowing that inside those black walls, something old was beginning to stir. Something that had been waiting for 2 million years. Something that knew exactly what they were afraid of. At least, it knew what most species were afraid of. Humans were about to teach it something new. The inside of the station was wrong. Katie knew it the moment she stepped through the door. The corridors were too long. The angles were too sharp. The ceiling was too high in some places and too low in others. It was like walking through a nightmare drawn by someone who had never seen a building before. The air was cold and smelled like metal and something older, something that had been sealed away for a very long time. Their footsteps echoed strangely, bouncing off walls that seemed to absorb sound and throw it back, changed. Katie raised her hand, and the team stopped. "We split up here. 3 teams. Cover more ground," she said. She pointed at Danny and 2 Valori. "Alpha team, you're with me. We check the command center." She pointed at Ben and Lisa Grant, their communications specialist, who had joined them at the last moment. "Beta team, find their records. Figure out who built this place." She looked at Megan and the Kreth warriors. "Gamma team, secure the perimeter. Make sure nothing comes up behind us." The teams separated and moved into the darkness. Alpha team found the command center 10 minutes later. It was a large room filled with dead screens and strange machines. Katie could not recognize any of the technology. It was too old, too different from anything the Coalition had ever built. "Ben, can you get these systems working?" Katie asked into her communicator. Ben's voice came back, crackling with static. "I can try. Give me a minute." While they waited, Danny walked around the room, looking at everything with careful eyes. The 2 Valori stood near the door. They looked uncomfortable. Their skin had gone from green to a pale gray color. "You two okay?" Katie asked. The male Valori, named Jethro, shook his head slowly. "The pressure is stronger here, much stronger. It feels like something is watching us, waiting." "I don't feel anything," Danny said. "We know," Jethro said. There was something in his voice that Katie did not like. It sounded almost like fear. Valori were not supposed to sound afraid. The screens around them suddenly flickered to life. Blue light filled the room, and strange symbols began scrolling across every surface. Ben's voice came through the communicator, excited and nervous at the same time. "I'm in, but Katie, you need to see this. I found their logs, their mission logs." "What did they call themselves?" Katie asked. "The architects. They were here 2.3 million years ago, and they were working on something called the frequency." Katie did not like the way he said that word. "What's the frequency?" There was a pause. When Ben spoke again, his voice was quieter. "It's a weapon. A psychological weapon. It broadcasts a signal that triggers the fear response in sentient beings. It makes them feel terror so strong that they cannot move, cannot think, cannot do anything except be afraid." The two Valori made sounds of distress. Katie looked at them and saw that they were shaking. "That's what we're feeling," Jethro whispered. "The frequency. It's still active. It's been broadcasting for 2 million years." Katie's blood went cold. "Ben, can you shut it down?" "I'm trying to find the controls, but the system is complicated. I need more time." An alarm began to sound. It was not like any alarm Katie had ever heard. It was deep and wrong, like the scream of some animal that should not exist. Red lights began flashing along the corridors. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere at once, filling the station with words in a language Katie did not understand. But Ben understood. He had been studying the architect language since they arrived. "Containment breach in Sector 7, Ben translated. "Subject Omega has awakened." Danny moved closer to Katie. "What's Subject Omega?" "I don't know," Ben said. "But whatever it is, it's what the frequency was built for." The effect was immediate. The Valori collapsed. Both of them fell to the ground, clutching their heads and making terrible sounds. Their telepathic abilities, which normally helped them communicate, had become weapons against them. They were picking up fear from each other, from the other Valori in the station, amplifying it and sending it back in an endless loop of terror. Through the communicator, Katie heard the Kreth warriors screaming. The Kreth never screamed. They were warriors, born and bred for battle. But now they were making sounds of pure animal fear, attacking shadows and walls and anything that moved. "All teams report," Katie shouted into the communicator. Megan's voice came back, strained but controlled. "The Kreth have gone crazy. They're attacking everything. I'm trying to sedate them, but I can't get close." Lisa's voice came next, somehow calm despite everything. "I'm with Ben. We're okay. The frequency is affecting us a little, but we can still function." Katie looked at Danny. "You feel anything?" Danny rubbed his forehead. "Headache, like someone's playing bad music inside my skull, but nothing I can't handle." Katie felt it too, a pressure behind her eyes, a wrongness in her thoughts. But it was just discomfort. It was not the paralyzing terror that had brought down the Valori and the Kreth. She did not understand why, but she did not have time to understand. She had people to save. "Danny, help me with them," she said, pointing at the fallen Valori. "We need to get them somewhere safe." Danny lifted Jethro over his shoulder like he weighed nothing. Katie grabbed the other Valori and did the same. They were lighter than they looked. "Ben, Lisa, keep working on those controls. Find a way to shut down the frequency." "What about Subject Omega?" Ben asked. Katie gritted her teeth. "One problem at a time. First we save our people. Then we deal with whatever the hell Subject Omega is." They moved through the corridors, carrying their unconscious crewmates, stepping over Kreth warriors, who had collapsed after exhausting themselves, attacking nothing. The station had become a house of nightmares, filled with the sounds of screaming and crying and the deep wrong hum of the frequency. But the humans kept walking. Their heads hurt. Their hearts were beating too fast. They felt uncomfortable and irritated and slightly nauseous. But they did not stop. Danny looked at Katie as they walked. You know what this reminds me of? What? Finals week back in school. You know that feeling when you haven't slept in 3 days and everything feels weird and wrong? That's what this feels like. It was a small laugh. Tired and dark, but it was a laugh. We're inside an alien death station, and you're comparing it to finals week. Hey, I failed calculus twice. This is nothing. They kept walking. Around them, aliens screamed in terror, and the humans carried them to safety, complaining about headaches, making bad jokes, and refusing to let fear make their decisions. They did not know that this was the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. They were just doing their jobs. That was what humans did. Lisa Grant had learned 17 languages in her 30 years of life. She spoke 3 dead languages and could read ancient texts that no one had touched in centuries. But nothing had prepared her for the language of the architects. She sat in front of the main console, her eyes moving across the scrolling symbols as she tried to make sense of what she was reading. The frequency hummed through the station around her, pressing against her thoughts like a weight. It was annoying, like a mosquito buzzing near her ear that she could not swat, but she could still think. She could still work. Ben Avery worked beside her, his fingers moving across controls that were not designed for human hands. Every few seconds he would stop and rub his temples. The headache was getting worse for all of them. I think I found something, Lisa said suddenly. The research logs. They explain what the frequency actually does. Katie's voice came through the communicator. Tell me. Lisa read from the screen, translating as she went. The architects discovered that fear is universal. Every sentient species in the galaxy has some form of fear response. It's built into our brains, into our very nature. Fear keeps us alive by making us avoid danger. That's basic biology, Danny's voice said. What's special about their discovery? They found that fear follows patterns. In most species, fear works the same way. When you feel fear, your body freezes, your mind goes blank. You cannot think, cannot act. Fear is designed to stop you in your tracks, so that predators cannot see you move. There was a pause. Then Katie spoke. That's not how humans work. Exactly. Lisa kept reading. The architects tested the frequency on hundreds of species. In every single case, the subjects experienced total paralysis, complete shutdown of thought and action. The frequency amplifies the natural fear response until it becomes overwhelming. But we're just getting headaches, Ben said. Lisa nodded slowly. Because human fear works differently. Our ancestors didn't survive by freezing. We survived by fighting back. When humans feel fear, our bodies don't shut down. They speed up. Our hearts beat faster. Our muscles get stronger. Our minds become sharper. Fear doesn't paralyze us. It prepares us to act. The station shook slightly. Somewhere in the distance, something was moving. The architects never found a species like us, Lisa continued. Their weapon was designed for a universal response, but humans are an exception. The frequency affects us, yes. It makes us uncomfortable. It gives us headaches. At high levels, it might even make us angry or irrational. But it can't shut us down. Our fear response is on a different wavelength entirely. Katie's voice came back. So that's why we're still standing while everyone else collapsed. It seemed so. Lisa looked at the next section of text and felt her stomach drop. But there's more. Subject Omega. I found out what it is. Tell us. Subject Omega isn't a creature. It's a machine. A frequency amplifier. The station was a test facility, but Subject Omega was designed to be a weapon of war. When fully activated, it can broadcast the frequency across an entire star system. Every sentient being in that system would experience maximum fear. Forever. Forever? Danny's voice was sharp. The signal causes permanent damage at full power. It burns out the parts of the brain that regulate fear. The victims never recover. They spend the rest of their lives trapped in constant terror. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Katie's voice came through, steady and determined. "Where is Subject Omega now? And how do we turn it off?" Ben pulled up a map of the station. A red dot blinked in a section marked Sector 7. "It's there. And according to these readings, it's charging. The frequency we're feeling now is just the background radiation. When Subject Omega reaches full power, how long do we have?" Ben calculated quickly. 4 hours, maybe less. "Then we have 4 hours to shut it down." Katie's voice left no room for argument. "Ben, Danny, you're with me. We're going to Sector 7. Lisa, keep working on those controls. See if there's a way to shut it down remotely. And if there isn't, then we do it manually." In the medical bay that Katie had set up in one of the station's rooms, Megan Holmes worked frantically. She had 6 Valori laid out on makeshift beds, all of them unconscious and shaking. The Kreth warriors had been sedated and restrained, their powerful bodies still twitching even in drug-induced sleep. Commander Velithana was awake, barely. Her eyes were open, but they were unfocused, lost in some inner horror that Megan could not see. "Commander," Megan said gently, "can you hear me?" Velithana's eyes moved slowly until they found Megan's face. You should be screaming." "Excuse me?" "The frequency. I can feel it. It should have destroyed your mind. But you're standing there, working, talking to me like nothing is wrong." Velithana's voice was weak, confused. "How?" Megan smiled, though she didn't feel like smiling. "Human brains are weird, Commander. We don't shut down when we're scared. We just get really focused and a little bit angry." That's not possible." "Apparently it is." Megan checked the monitors around her. The Valori vital signs were stabilizing, but they were still in bad shape. "Just rest, Commander. We're going to fix this." "Your fear," Velithna whispered. "I can sense it. You are afraid. I feel it clearly." Megan nodded. "Yes, I'm terrified." "But you keep moving, keep working, keep helping us." Velithna's eyes were wide with wonder. "Your fear doesn't stop you. It makes you faster." "Like I said, human brains are weird." Velithna closed her eyes. "We chose well," she murmured, "when we invited your species into the coalition. We thought you were just adaptable. We didn't know you were impossible." Megan laughed softly and went back to work. Across the station, the other humans were doing the same thing, walking into danger, carrying their friends, fighting against something that should have destroyed them. They were afraid. Every single one of them was afraid. But they had learned, across millions of years of evolution, that fear was just information. It told you that something mattered. It told you that something was worth fighting for. And humans had always been very good at fighting. The corridor to Sector 7 was the longest walk of Danny Cowell's life. The frequency grew stronger with every step, pressing against his skull like a vice. His headache had become a pounding drum inside his head. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. And something else was happening too, something he didn't want to think about. He was getting angry. Not annoyed, not frustrated, angry. The kind of deep, burning rage that made him want to break things. It was the frequency, he knew. At higher intensities, it didn't just cause discomfort in humans, it pushed them toward aggression, toward violence. Katie walked beside him, her jaw tight and her eyes hard. She felt it too. They all did. Ben Avery stumbled slightly, and Danny caught his arm. The engineer was pale and sweating, but he kept moving. That was the thing about humans. They kept moving. "Talk to me," Katie said suddenly. "Both of you. Say anything. Keep your minds occupied. Did I ever tell you about the time I almost died on asteroid R47? Danny asked. No. I was mining alone. My partner had taken sick. There was a cave-in, and I got trapped in a pocket about 6 feet wide. Took rescue teams 14 hours to dig me out. Katie glanced at him. How did you survive? I sang. Every song I could remember. When I ran out of songs, I made up new ones. The rescue team said they could hear me singing the whole time. Some of the songs were pretty terrible. Ben laughed weakly. What did you sing? Old Earth stuff, mostly. Country music. My mom used to play it when I was a kid. Danny's voice softened for a moment. Funny thing about fear. When you're trapped in the dark waiting to die, you don't think about the big stuff. You think about small things. The way your mom's kitchen smelled. The sound of your sister laughing. Little stuff. They reached a heavy door marked with architect symbols. Ben studied the controls for a moment, then pressed a sequence of buttons. The door groaned and slowly opened. Inside was Subject Omega. It was bigger than Danny had expected. It filled the entire room, a massive machine of black metal and pulsing lights. It looked like a heart, he thought. A mechanical heart beating with evil light. Cables ran from it in every direction, connecting it to the walls, the floor, the ceiling. It was alive in its own way. Alive and growing stronger. The frequency was almost unbearable here. Danny felt it washing over him in waves, each one stronger than the last. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Katie's voice was strained. Ben, how do we shut it down? Ben stumbled toward a console near the base of the machine. His fingers trembled as he tried to work the controls. There's a shutdown sequence, but it requires manual override. Someone has to stay here and hold the switch for 90 seconds while the system powers down. What happens to whoever stays? Ben's voice was barely a whisper. Full exposure, maximum frequency, for 90 seconds. They all knew what that meant. For an alien, it would mean death. For a human, nobody knew. Permanent damage probably. Maybe death anyway. Maybe worse than death. I'll do it, Danny said. Katie spun around. Danny, you're the ranking officer. You need to get everyone out. Danny's voice was calm, calmer than he felt. Ben needs to guide the shutdown. That leaves me. You could die. I know. Danny smiled, though it took effort. Remember R-47? I spent 14 hours in the dark waiting to die. 90 seconds is nothing. Katie stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. There was no time to argue. There was no other choice. Ben, show him what to do. Then we need to get everyone moving toward the shuttle. While Ben explained the shutdown sequence to Danny, Katie opened her communicator. All teams, this is Morris. We're initiating shutdown. Everyone move toward the extraction point immediately. Carry anyone who can't walk. Lisa's voice came back. Copy that. Megan and I have the Valori stabilized. We're moving now. The Kreth? Still sedated. We'll have to drag them. Do it. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this place gets very uncomfortable. Back in the medical bay, Megan Holt was already lifting Commander Valithna onto a makeshift stretcher. Lisa Grant helped her secure the straps. The commander's eyes were open, watching them. You should leave us, Valithna whispered. Save yourselves. Not happening, Megan said firmly. We don't leave people behind. We are aliens to you. Megan stopped and looked directly at the commander. You invited us into the coalition. You gave us a place among the stars. That makes you our people. Now shut up and let us save you. Valithna's eyes widened. In all her years of command, no one had ever spoken to her that way. But she said nothing more. She simply closed her eyes and let the humans carry her. In Sector 7, Danny stood alone in front of Subject Omega. Katie and Ben had gone. He had the shutdown controls in his hands. All he had to do was hold them for 90 seconds. The machine hummed. The frequency grew stronger. Danny felt fear washing over him like cold water, filling his lungs, drowning his thoughts. For a moment, Just a moment. He wanted to run, to drop the controls and flee into the dark. But then he thought about his sister back on Earth, about Katie and Megan and Ben and Lisa, about the Valori and the Kreth who were depending on him, about all the billions of people in this sector of space who would suffer if Subject Omega reached full power. Fear was just information. It told him that these people mattered, that this moment mattered. He pressed the controls. The world exploded into terror. Every fear Danny had ever felt came rushing back at once. The cave-in on R-47, the face of his father when he got sick, the day his mother died, the darkness and the loneliness and the certainty that he was going to die alone and forgotten. It all came back, amplified 1,000 times, screaming inside his head. But his hands stayed on the controls. 60 seconds. He screamed. He couldn't help it. The sound tore out of his throat as his body tried to reject what was happening to his mind. Tears ran down his face. His legs gave out and he fell to his knees. 40 seconds. The fear changed. It became something else. Pure, burning rage at this machine, at the architects who built it, at fear itself. Danny's screams became roars of defiance. 20 seconds. He couldn't see anymore. His vision had gone white. He couldn't think, but his hands stayed on the controls. His body remembered what his mind had forgotten. 10 seconds. 5. 0. Subject Omega went silent. The frequency died. The lights flickered and went out. Danny collapsed on the floor, unconscious before he hit the ground. But his hands were still reaching for the controls, still holding on, still refusing to let go. That was how Katie found him 2 minutes later. She carried him out of the station over her shoulder, walking through corridors that were finally silent. Behind her, the other humans carried their alien crewmates. They walked together into the light of the dying sun, alive against all odds. And none of them looked back. Danny Cowell woke up in a white room that smelled like medicine. The ceiling above him was curved and metallic. He was back on the starward reach, in the medical bay. He didn't remember how he got there. He tried to move, but his body felt like it was made of sand, heavy and loose at the same time. His head hurt, though not like before. This was a different kind of pain, deeper, more permanent. "You're awake." Danny turned his head slowly. Sitting beside his bed was Crixtal, the Kreth sub-commander. The insectoid warrior looked strange in the soft light of the medical bay. His hard shell and sharp mandibles seemed out of place among the healing machines. "How long?" Danny asked. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a long time. 3 weeks. The doctors weren't sure you would wake up at all. Danny processed this. 3 weeks. He had lost 3 weeks of his life to that machine. The others, he asked? All alive, all recovering. The Valori have regained their senses. My warriors are embarrassed, but unharmed. Crixtal's mandibles clicked in what Danny had learned to recognize as the Kreth version of a smile. Thanks to you. Not just me. Katie, Ben, Lisa, Megan, all of us. Yes, all of you. Crixtal leaned forward. I came to ask you something, a question that has been troubling me since I regained my senses. Danny waited. In the station, when the frequency activated, I felt fear like I have never felt before. It was total, absolute. I could not move, could not think, could not fight. I, who have killed enemies with my bare hands, was reduced to a screaming child. Crixtal's voice was hard with shame. But you walked through that same fear. You walked into the heart of it and stayed there for 90 seconds. How? Danny thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the darkness of the asteroid cave, about his mother singing in the kitchen, about the moment when fear had become rage and he had refused to let go. I don't know how to explain it, he said finally. I was afraid, more afraid than I've ever been. I felt everything you felt, The terror, the paralysis, the certainty that I was going to die. Then how did you keep moving? Danny smiled weakly. Because being afraid doesn't mean I have to stop. For humans, fear is just information. It tells us that something matters, that something is worth fighting for. So when I felt that fear, I didn't try to make it go away. I just used it. Crickstall was silent for a long moment. Then he stood and bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect among his people. We have fought beside humans before, he said. We thought we understood you. We were wrong. You are not fearless. You are something stranger, something more dangerous. You are fear's master, not its slave. Danny watched him go, then closed his eyes and slept again. 2 months later, Commander Velithna submitted her official report to Coalition Command. The report was classified at the highest level, but somehow parts of it leaked. Within a week, everyone in the Coalition had read it. Katie Morris stood at the observation window of the Starward Reach, watching the stars go by. She had read the report. Everyone had read the report. And now, everything was different. The door opened behind her. She knew who it was without looking. "You've been avoiding me," Danny said. He walked with a slight limp now, damage from the 90 seconds that the doctors couldn't repair. But he walked. "I've been busy," Katie said. It was a lie, and they both knew it. "What did the report say?" Danny asked. "The parts that weren't leaked." It recommended that in any situation involving psychological warfare or fear-based threats, human troops should be designated as primary response units. It said that our fear response makes us uniquely qualified to handle situations that would destroy other species. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Katie turned to face him. We're going to be sent into every nightmare scenario the Coalition can find. We're going to become the ones who walk into the darkness while everyone else waits outside. Danny nodded slowly. Yeah, that sounds about right. You're okay with that? We're the ones who can do it. If we don't, people die. Seems pretty simple to me. Katie studied his face. He looked older than he had 2 months ago. The lines around his eyes were deeper, but his eyes themselves were the same. Steady, calm, ready. You know what the Valori call us now? She asked. No. It's supposed to be a compliment. Danny laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and full. Fearwalkers. I like that. Sounds like a band name. Katie smiled despite herself. You're impossible. I'm human. Same thing. 6 months later, the Starward Reach received a new batch of recruits. Mixed species, as always. The aliens stared at the humans with new eyes. They had all read the reports from XR7. They had all heard the stories. A young Valori approached Katie Morris nervously. She was barely out of training, her skin still the bright green of youth. Lieutenant Morris? The young Valori asked. Is it true, what they say about humans? Katie looked at her. What do they say? That you walked into the frequency, that you carried us to safety while we were screaming, that one of your people stayed in the heart of that machine for 90 seconds and lived. That's true. Were you not afraid? It was a kind smile, patient and understanding. She had answered this question many times in the past 6 months. She would probably answer it many more times in the years to come. Every second, she said. That's the whole point. The young Valori's eyes widened. I don't understand. You will. Stick around long enough, and you'll see what humans are really like. We're not brave. We're terrified most of the time. We just refuse to let that stop us. She walked away, leaving the young recruit standing there with wonder in her eyes. The mission logs from XR7 became required reading at the Coalition Military Academy. Cadets of every species studied them carefully, searching for the secret of human courage. They analyzed the brain scans. They read the psychological reports. They watched the footage over and over, trying to understand. They never found a secret. There was only a species that had learned, across millions of years of evolution, that fear was not the end of action. It was the beginning. Somewhere out in the darkness of space, new threats were waiting. New nightmares were being born. And when they came, when they tried to use terror as a weapon, they would find humans waiting for them. Afraid, always afraid, but walking forward anyway.